Let's get started and build a very simple app with React and Redux. This app will have only 2 plain actions and 1 simple reducer. We will not worry about action creators or multiple reducers for now. Let's use the same app we've been using before in our React app. And let's also create a new directory called store. In this directory, let's create 2 new directories called actions and reducers. Let's also delete everything so we only have the word React appearing on the screen. We will start by setting up the actions. In the actions directory, create 2 files called actiontypes.js and actions.js. I'll start with a very simple example to show you how actions and reducers work. In the actiontypes.js file, create 2 action types called a string of success and a string of failure, all caps. And just to break this down, we've created 2 variables called success and failure and set the value of these variables to the string of success and failure. And we use the const keyword because we're not going to change the value of these variables. And we use the export keyword because we'll be using these variables in other components. Now in your actions file, import the action types and set the type as follows. Create a new export const success JavaScript variable and set the type to actiontypes.success. Doing this may seem redundant. For example, you can simply set the type to the string of success, but using a separate action types file is considered a best practice and a recommended approach to setting up actions. We will also import and use these action types in the reducer. In larger apps, this would become complex if we were only using strings, because if we wanted to rename an action type, we would have to track down every time it was used and change it in every component. By having one file that has all our action types, we can easily look it up and change the action types. And this pattern greatly reduces errors. Now let's create a new file called reducer1.js in the reducers directory. And here we'll create our first reducer. Let's first import our action types from the actiontypes.js file. And we'll start off by setting a variable called initial state to a JavaScript object. We don't need to use the export keyword since we'll just be using this variable in this file. So this JavaScript object that we just created is what's considered the actual Redux state. The properties and values are user defined and we can make them anything we want. We also don't have to start with a negative or empty state. We can hard code an array of strings or numbers or make the initial state whatever we want. For now, let's just create a property of state called stateprop1 and set it to false. Next, we have the switch statement. The root reducer will be a const variable with the name of the reducer as the function name. With ESX, the reducer is also an arrow function, and the reducer takes 2 parameters, state and actions. These parameters are reserved keywords and are not user defined. We set the state parameter equal to the initial state variable, and again, setting default parameters is also ES6 syntax. Now we can set up our switch case statement. We're just using JavaScript dot notation to access the type property that we set up in the action in the last step. And this was, again, remember, just a string of success. And a switch case statement is really just an if-else statement. So this reads as check the action.type property, and then the case statement means if the action type is success, run this code block. Each case statement is a type of action, and each case statement must be a type of action you defined in the action types file, and this case statement can't have any other value. At the bottom, you have a default statement that returns the original state with a spread operator. If an action is dispatched that matches the type in the switch function, then as you can see, we first use the spread operator on the current state. This both flattens and creates a new copy of the previous state. The spread operator also allows us to change a single property of the JavaScript object, and which we can do simply by setting state prop to the value of true in the first case statement. We're also not limited to changing one state property at a time. We can change multiple state properties with one action. And finally, we just export our reducer at the bottom of the file.